Recording.
Yes, just started. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Lucianne.
It's good to see your faces this morning. We have a quorum, so we're going to go ahead and start our meeting. This is Wednesday, April 28th, 2020, and it is 10:06 in the morning. Can we have a roll call?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's a little muffled. Try that again, one more time.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
The sound is not very clear coming over my computer.
Okay.
This is Mary McCormick.
Hida, could you try that one more time? Try your audio one more time.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm gonna start with roll call. Joy Hoffmeister.
Here.
Lucianne Harjo.
Here.
Jim Parrish.
Here.
Lisa John.
Here.
Greg Anderson. Lori Hamilton. Jana Roth. David Walkingstick. Judy Davis. Rhonda Hayworth. Mary McCormick.
Here.
Esther Bell. Paul Pinkerton. Robert Bible.
Here.
Shoshana Wasserman.
Here.
Corey Gray.
Here.
Annette Long.
Here.
Todd Crabtree. Julian Guerrero.
Here.
That's 10 present.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I might, please, Mary McCormick. I did not hear the response of Paul Pinkerton. Is he present?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you.
No,
Oh. Nope, I did not hear his. Okay,
I didn't either.
that would make 11 present.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, we have a quorum. Do we need to do Pledge of Allegiance? No? Let's move on. Okay, good. First, we have welcoming remarks from the Honorable Joy Hoffmeister from the State Department of Public Instruction.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. We are now in our 4th week of distance learning across the state with guidance from the Oklahoma State Department of Education. Each local district created its own distance learning plan, customized to best benefit its individual students. Learning methods range from paper packets to specialized education programming on OETA, the PBS affiliate across the state, to complete online learning systems and teacher-student Zoom calls, much like we're having right now, depending on what type of resources the community has available to them. According to a statewide survey that we did at the State Department of Education, Nearly 1 in 4 Oklahoma students still does not, it's actually more like 1 in 5, does not have the reliable internet access that we believe they should have. And we want to use this opportunity to close the digital divide so that rural Oklahoma also has the connectivity that many other districts have come to depend on, and yet they are still left out. There are unique opportunities for partnerships between tribal nations to improve rural broadband access amidst this COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. So we're looking forward to conversations around that. Also, I encourage all tribal nations to submit application for the U.S. Federal Communications Commission Rural Tribal Window, and that opportunity is available now. This opportunity expands tribal nations' ability to tap into the spectrum that increase rural access to broadband services. The spectrum available in this window is a portion of the 2.5 gigahertz band. The FCC is also making a 3.5 gigahertz spectrum available to help as well. This will help bring broadband to underserved areas, including rural areas. For example, the Nisqually tribe, located in rural Washington state, obtained 2.5 gigahertz spectrum via a waiver in 2013 to enhance their educational offerings, including access to online classes with K through 12 and university levels. The tribe currently offers free internet connectivity to its tribal members. I'm not sure I'm going to say this correctly. The Havasupai tribe, located in Arizona on the floor of the Grand Canyon, deployed its network within weeks of gaining access to the spectrum. Currently, the tribe's network provides online classes for students and continuing education for teachers. There is more information that can be found at fcc.gov/rural tribal window. In addition, the OSDE American Indian Education Office has a new intern, Sharice Miller, whose position is funded by the Osage Nation, is helping OSDE pilot a new American Indian Leadership and Innovation Internship Program. Ms. Miller is a graduate student with the Osage Nation, and her internship will focus on investigating American Indian performance on national and state assessments, including understanding why Oklahoma American Indian students excel in NAEP versus their national American Indian Alaska Native peers. The OSDE also attended partnership meetings with the Muskogee Creek Nation to discuss a potential new STEP grant to continue activities related to strengthening state-tribal relationships. In addition, the OSDE attended the most recent Shawnee area joint consultation, which represented over 6 school districts and a combined total of 3,500 American Indian students at Shawnee, Tecumseh, North Rock Creek, Seminole, Noble, and McLeod schools. The OSDE continues to be present at as many tribal consultations as possible and will continue to attend these virtual consultations during the global pandemic. The OSDE has also sent formal response to the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Indian Education, requesting interim Title VI guidance regarding critical functions and the implementation for Indian education programs amid the pandemic. We requested their guidance on certain flexibilities, waivers, and fiscal management technical assistance to assist our Indian education programs during the crisis. But we know that anytime we receive guidance, it assists us as we move forward, both strengthening partnerships and collaboration together. So now our focus is shifting to graduation as we think about our students still keeping their families and the community safe. We are not recommending that there be large group gatherings for graduation. Those who are making plans for a graduation ceremony in the month of May need to try to do that virtually, or if it is an extremely small class of 10 or less, of course, they may find ways to do that in an innovative way with parades down Main Street or renting the drive-in theater and other ways to accommodate social distancing to protect families. But in the month of June, we do anticipate that there will be some graduation ceremonies that will be in person in football stadiums perhaps, or outdoor settings, but it is still an unknown, and we do caution districts to please be very careful. Our final focus is on the relaunch of the recovery phase, which is where we want to focus on the learning that has been lost in Oklahoma due to the cessation of traditional school and the inability to connect in person. We know that this will not be repaired or remedied or bridged in just a few weeks return to the fall semester, but instead will require some very significant resources as well as strategy to close gaps, to complete any unfinished learning from this year, and to fold that into this next year as well. So there is a heavy lift coming, and we are grateful for the partnership of those who are here, those who are going to be supporting work over the summer, and also carrying that through to the next year and beyond. This work will not be swift. It must be thorough, and it is what our kids deserve. So I appreciate so much each of you that are here today.
Thank you.
I have a question. This is Mary McCormick. I have a question, please.
Yes, ma'am.
We certainly appreciate your work, but did you read my handout from last meetings on education that I presented to the board?
Could you refresh my memory of the topic, of the particulars of that? It's been, a lot has occurred since then. I just want to refresh my memory.
Sure. I believe they put it on the agenda as just, well, where is it? I saw it somewhere. But as just a presentation from a board member here on education. I believe it is listed as K through 12 American Indian recommendations on page 2 of our minutes of last February. But in this, Madam Superintendent, I do hope you'll read it again, because as I guess I'm one of the elders now of this committee, but I myself, even though I haven't been in the classroom for the past, 10 years, I've been retired, 15 years. But, and as I read the local papers, education just going headstrong into get testing. And we just praise that academic student on her A's, and that's good. All of that is good, except, Madam Superintendent, the Oklahoma law states Oklahoma will educate every child or student. And to me, we need to get together and redefine what are we talking about education. Because when I was in college, they had a lot of remedial classes. And when I went to Oklahoma University. University supposedly at one time even meant a higher in-depth education than the teachers' college that we had at East Central at one time. And then we have our junior colleges. So when you go to a university, that supposedly used to mean a higher level of learning and a little more concise perhaps, but now we have students who never worked in high school, and then they want to go. Every parent thinks their child is bound for university, you know, college level. And let's face the fact, not every student is capable of higher education. And at my level, there's nothing wrong with hard work. And I'm not just talking to the superintendent now, board members, I'm including you. You came on this board evidently to make changes for the better for the American Indian student. We're not doing it. Nobody even listens to us. Nobody even knows we exist. And we're not recommending anything. We make several recommendations, but I have no feedback from them. Nobody is paying attention. And Madam Superintendent, I wish you would find that, because I specifically asked that a copy be made available to you. And we need to get back to some basic things. You know, my plumber drove a bigger car. My stars, what was that big old car? You know, he evidently made money, and he told you when he would arrive. He didn't, I don't care what kind of water problem you were having. He was that busy that he told you when he could arrive. So there's nothing wrong with, I just can't find the word. What is that called? Where you work?
Career technology and the high skill, high industry demand certifications. Is that what you're referring to?
No, it isn't. But anyway, that's what y'all call it today, which is good. That's all right. But we need to, according to Oklahoma law, we need to make a student able to read just some basic things, read, write, add, history. Just be sure they know those things. Once you can read, you can pretty well help solve your problem. But we're graduating students. We just get caught up in all kinds of things. I read in our local paper here where one student, she's going to go to the university along with her high school studies. Excellent, excellent, except you're not the right age to go to university where adults are, young people are, or people who already graduated high school. You don't need to be in that kind of environment. Just stay in your own environment. And I'm probably taking up too much time, Madam Chair, but anyway, I want to, again, push this, what do you call it, goal, reconsideration about education, and taking another hard look. Board members, Indian people are depending on us. We said, or I did, thought we were going to make a change. We've never been invited to either the Senate or the representative to any of their statewide meetings. Never. Even our chair has never, so far as I know, never heard a report. But some of you are in education. Don't y'all have a state superintendent's meeting and whatever? That ought to be double. That ought to be a double whammy from us. Speaking from the Advisory Council on Indian Education, and then the state superintendent's education. And then we even had a university board member at the beginning. So that was all levels of education. But I do request and hope that you, the leaders, would help write, report. Many of you report, you attend national meetings, national conferences. So raise your voice. Speak up indeed for Indian people. We're not even on television, you know. And I used to use deodorant as well as anybody else, the other people of the community. White, black, or Indian, whatever. Well, but I don't see any of us being used in advertisements, and we probably smell as bad as the next person, you know. But my point is, board members, let us indeed do Indian tribes a good job. I have been on both sides of the fences, three sides of the fences as a tribal leader, duly elected. Duly elected. That's a hard thing to do in Indian tribes, is get elected. And then I've taught school. And then I did a lot of community work, tribal work before, here in Seminole County before it was even popular to be an Indian. So, but anyway, I guess I'm too long, Madam Chair. So, and Madam State Superintendent, I appreciate your work, but you're to hear our recommendations and be supportive of us and be just happy to meet with you any other time. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. State Superintendent, thank you for your remarks. On the pilot program, I'm intrigued by the Osage Nation. Sharice Miller, you mentioned that she will be piloting a new program. Would you, I didn't get to write all that down, but it had to do with assessment. Is that correct?
Yes, and this is the study of how those Native American students in Oklahoma outperform those that are taking the NAEP, the National Assessment for Educational Progress assessment all across the country. So our Native American students outperform their peers in other states. Julian could speak to any of the other particulars.
Yes, so the program itself, the internship opportunity is something that we're interested in sustaining with multiple tribes, but more so to really investigate this phenomenon, if you will, that our American Indian students in Oklahoma are doing better than compared to their national counterparts. And that we want to make sure, what are those sorts of realities, what are those sorts of supports that are causing this, or are there certain supports that are causing this? So a part of the opportunity in the intern will be diving through data, working with Rebecca Logan, our executive director for NAEP, but then also working with a few representatives from the assessment office, joining myself to communicate with Eric Friend, and to really have one individual spend a unique amount of time really focusing on this question: why do our Oklahoma Native students do better? And I could spend all day telling you why, but we want to make sure that we're investigating this with fidelity, through data and through relationships. So it's definitely there's multiple pieces to this opportunity, but I think the big takeaway is that the partnership with the tribal nation, Osage Nation, is something that can really foster continued community collaborative efforts between the State Department of Education and tribal nations. And this is something that I'm interested in, we are interested to continue and move forward and find other ways to have graduate students learn about the unique issues in education.
Okay, thank you. One last question, Superintendent Hoffmeister or Julian. You mentioned that you sent an inquiry to the Office of Indian Education regarding the Title VI programs in our state. Have you had a reply yet regarding your questions?
This is Julian. No, we have not received a response as of yet. Monty Guthrie and myself are both making sure that we're checking daily on when OIE, the Office of Indian Education, will get a response to us. And by all means, we do check in every week. And I have sent a few extra messages to OIE asking them, when should we anticipate getting some clarification?
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Madam Chair.
Hoffmeister.
Madam Chair, Mary McCormick.
Yes, good morning. Yes.
Yes. May we have copies of this report, or how long is it? Maybe some basic idea of what they submitted.
This is Julian. We'd be happy to provide a copy of the correspondence that we sent. It's a one-page correspondence that included 8 critical questions asking the OIE for clarification and guidance, interim guidance, because many of our grantees are asking several questions regarding to fiscal management questions, carryover, parent committee signatures during the PCA, as well as tribal consultations. Just want to remind the council that we are conducting tribal consultations still, and the guidance that I've been assisting districts on pushing and continuing the way we do our tribal consultation. And just recently, Yukon, Deer Creek Public Schools, I attended their virtual consultation with their local tribes, and it was a success. So, you know, I don't think our work stops just because of coronavirus. We find other ways to continue this work. But again, going back to your question, Councilmember McCormick, I'd be happy to send you a copy of that letter.
Madam Chair, Mary McCormick again.
Yes.
Excellent work, Julian. But I see nothing in the papers or on television about our work. And if indeed the American Indian student is doing such an excellent job, don't you think our statewide Indians need to know that? And maybe they'll be encouraged to really be faithful to making sure their child is in school every day. Something's wrong here. We're not seen at the national level. We're not even heard at the state level. So how do we get into the loop? You know, according to all these reports, it's just success, 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 and that is good. However,
may I interject a comment on that, please?
Yes, yes.
The NAEP scores are reported and publicized, shared by the State Department and through other outlets in Indian country about how our performance, how our students perform on the NAEP assessment. So that part is always shared annually, it seems. I don't think
I'm sorry, where at?
This is shared every year at the State Board of Education meeting, which is, of course, a public meeting. We put out press releases, and it also gets national attention by the National Office for Educational Progress. So while this may not be as apparent to some, it is very, very apparent to others on the national level. And we brag quite often when I make presentations to interlocal tribal presentations on state of the state. We also present on how we are doing with the ACT and the SAT. And we present at the symposium with the Supreme Court as well. And there are regular briefings to the public on the state of education with Native American students. So I am so sorry that you are not seeing that, or we'll need to do a better job to get copies to you as well, but it can never be talked about enough. So I do agree with you on that. I have to say, I apologize. I have a very important phone conference that is scheduled, and they're calling me with the Department of Mental Health, and I'm going to have to step off. I apologize for only being able to be on this much right now, and I just missed that call. But I'm don't want to have you ask a question and I not be here to answer. So I'll ask Julian and Monty to please provide me with any additional report and feedback and summary. And Ms. McCormick, I will also make sure that I have refreshed my memory with your letter from the presentation last time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ms.
The next
McCormick,
item on the agenda is an action item. Yes.
this is Monty, and I was just going to share with you, it's not just in the area of Indian education. It is so much more difficult to get positive things in the media about education as opposed to the negatives. We struggle with that in every area of education. It's so great things happen around our state and in our classrooms and now virtually every single day. And it seldom does it get media coverage. But one negative thing can happen, and it will be on every television station, all the radio stations, and all the newspapers. So that is something that it's a struggle for everyone to get the good news about education out on a public basis. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Monty. However, I think the bottom line is we want to make an effort. I know other groups of people are making that effort, and they are finally being seen and heard. And so we're kind of being left behind, not in just education, mind you, in all areas. And so as a tribal leader, ex-tribal leader, as just a citizen, just as a member of 3 tribes, you've taught me education. So I know a little bit about education. And so I have the right to speak as a board member, as a past political Indian leader, and just as a citizen of Seminole County, just as a citizen of Oklahoma. And we've come a lot of years. I'm much older than you all, so I've been quite acquainted. I'm just sick. I still think about that high school student at Barnum High School. According to my brother, and I thoroughly agree with him, he should have made the national baseball teams, but nobody advertised about him, and I didn't either. As a faculty teacher at that school, I should have been one of the ones really talking about his ability, but I was quiet, you know. I didn't want to upset anybody's feelings, but anyway, thank you.
Next item on the agenda is an action item, discussion and possible action to approve or disapprove the minutes of February 26, 2020.
So moved, Mary McCormick.
Motion made by Mary. Is there a second?
I second it. Paul Pinkerton.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay.
Roll call.
Sorry. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Okay, awesome. Yes. Okay, Lucy Ann Hardrow,
Yes.
Jim Parrish,
Yes.
Lisa John, Lisa John. Okay, Mary McCormick,
Yes.
Paul Pinkerton,
Yes.
Robert Bible,
Yes.
Shoshana Wasserman,
Yes.
Corey Gray,
Yes.
Annette Long,
Yes.
Julian Guerrero.
Yes.
Okay. Updates from the American Indian Education Office is next on the agenda by Julian Guerrero, Executive Director of American Indian Education.
Ms. Chair, can I make one comment before we move on?
Yes.
I think, is Lisa online? Because I think whenever he was doing the original roll call, Jim was late in answering, and then she called Lisa's name and he answered then, and I think it was mistakenly answering for both. So is she on our line? Because if not, we would be back down to 10 members.
I do not see her name on the Zoom. Gary, can you confirm that Lisa John is not?
She is not. She is not there.
Okay, I just wanted to make that note because I thought whenever they called roll that we may have got that mixed up. So, okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Jim, like usual, is
I try to stay muted as long as I can, and then I'm getting accused of being late. I just showed I was awake, Jim. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Robert.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
I
Okay.
forgot to ask if we had any questions or concerns over the minutes or anything that we need to address, any changes? Okay. Well, we're moving forward to the updates from the American Indian Education Office with Julian.
Okay. Madam Chair, do we, item 4, amendment to the bylaws? Is that,
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you for that. The next item on the agenda is an action item, a discussion and possible action to amend the Advisory Council organizational bylaws to reflect modifications that allow teleconference and video conference attendance.
so if I could speak on this just briefly, Madam Chair. Working in coordination with OSDE Legal Counsel, Mr. Brad Clark, Ms. Lori Murphy, and Mr. Monty Guthrie, myself, we have all been really trying to answer the question, can the OACIE conduct business virtually if in the bylaws we prohibit virtual attendance, and that would prohibit the meeting occurring. In discussion with legal counsel, they did clarify to myself and Monty on that it is allowable per state statutory amendment that the State Board of Education conducts their meetings virtually, so the OACIE can do theirs virtually as well. So if we could, the possible discussion and action is to wanted to ask the council if we could modify the bylaws to make sure that it reflects a modification to allow teleconference and video conference attendance in our regular meetings. Of course, this is coming from, like, as we all know, the coronavirus COVID-19 circumstance that we're in. So if the council wanted to, after the situation, maybe return to no teleconference, video conference, however, just to make sure we're on par legally, we need this amendment to occur.
I'll make a motion that we accept this.
I'll second.
There's a motion by Jim Parrish and a second by Robert.
Okay.
I have a question, Mary McCormick.
Okay.
It's not so much a question, but I'm sorry. I would disagree. May I have the floor?
Go ahead, Mary.
Okay. I would disagree with this motion until it has been fully discussed in our board meeting. I think if such a clause were inserted, it should be only at times like this when there is a national problem. But we're an Indian Education Advisory Council for Oklahoma. And not to see each other, not to get to know each other. And are you saying that from henceforth we'll just meet at our home places? This is a statewide advisory, supposed to be committee on Indian education. There is a need for us to see each other. So if we disagree with a motion, we should be able to hear each other in person.
I understand that it's a.
I caution this committee to even consider it, other than maybe when not only a statewide but a worldwide crisis is there, then that's something else. Definitely, we can meet like we do now, what with the communication advantages we now have. But again, I guess maybe I'm the only one. I want to hear the other board members, and I want them on record.
I believe that's the wording that Julian presented, was that this is possibly a one-time due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this is a time that we will need to make this adjustment to our bylaws, and we can revisit this at the next quarterly meeting to adjust it.
Oh, well,
Any other questions?
Mary McCormick again. I'm sorry, Julian. If you said just this one meeting, then I'm sorry, I missed it.
Okay. There's a motion was made by Jim and second by Robert.
Okay.
May we have a roll call?
Yes. Lucy Ann Harjo,
Yes.
Jim Parrish,
Yes.
Mary McCormick,
No, and Jim, I missed the joke. What was funny about it? I vote no.
Because I have to unmute my phone and I'm always a little late, Mary. That's what we're laughing about.
Paul Pinkerton,
Yes.
Robert Bible,
Yes.
Shoshana Wasserman,
Yes.
Cory Gray,
Yes.
Annette Long,
Yes.
and Julian Guerrero.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other, are we good, Julian? Okay. So now moving on to item number 5.
Madam Chair, Mary McCormick again, please.
Yes.
As I'm looking at that motion, I don't see one time or once a, I don't see any kind of restrictions on it. It just says we're going to do it. And evidently, according to this motion, as I see it on my screen, we can do it anytime we want to now.
Is that a question? Just expressing concern?
That is a concern with my vote, no.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. Julian, updates?
Yes, so there's plenty to update about, but I wanted to focus on a few things. The first two is, again, a reiteration that we have requested interim guidance to the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Indian Education, in regarding appropriate supports for Title VI programs, those being, inquiries related to how Title VI programs, are they allowed to do carryovers this year just because of COVID-19? Electronic versus digital signatures, what is the appropriate method to obtain those? The conduct of tribal consultations, what is the appropriate method that the OIE wants? And really, at the time when we sent the letter and in its design, we wanted to be proactive to these questions as my office has been receiving a plethora of these questions. I think so far I could count around 50 to 60 school districts who've called on these issues, and really have, the letter is an amalgamation of the most common questions that we've received, and we sent that on. Again, just for the record, we have not received any official response back, other than the OIE letting us know that they're working on a booklet or a manual, some sort of written document that responds to our questions. I will make sure that the letter itself is uploaded to the Google Drive. The Google Drive link is located at the top of your agenda. You can go to that link and go to 2020 for the year 2020, and then the attachments are there. Again, it's not there currently, but I'll make sure to upload it into the Google Drive. Something I wanted to touch base on that was interrupted by our COVID-19 circumstance was the continuing preparations to collaborate with Johnson O'Malley programs across Oklahoma. Admittedly, I don't think that I do enough in terms of supporting our JOM programs. Now, I do have to admit that JOM programs are not out of the U.S. Department of Education. They're out of the U.S. Department of the Interior. out of the Bureau of Indian Education. However, we are this year still on target with an intent to support JOM programs with their needs. And just recently, I don't know if the council is aware, but the U.S. Government Accountability Office, the U.S. GAO, released an accountability report on the circumstances surrounding the mismanagement, if you will, of Johnson O'Malley programs. But really the recommendations, and there were 5 that the GAO cited, were all focused on recommending to the BIE to come up with better management, whether that be fiscal or administrative or technical guidance or assistance, whether in contracts to schools or in contracts with tribal nations, making sure that there is better internal control. So for those who are familiar with the GAS standards for government accountability and reporting, typically federal agencies have to abide by a certain protocol or internal control standards. Those standards don't exist from what the GAO has found. Further, the GAO found that the forms that the BIE makes, well, I shouldn't say makes, but requires grantees to use, those forms aren't even reviewed by the Office of Management and Budget. The process of standard forms goes through OMB and the Office of Intergovernmental Review Administration, OIRA. Every standard information collection and what they call IC has to go through a review process to get approval from the OMB that they can do a collection. The GAO found in their report or in their study that information collections did not even have an OMB approval number on them, meaning that they didn't even go through the approval process. So you'll see if you have ever filled out a Title VI ED 506 form or a parent committee approval form, you'll notice an OMB number at the top of them. A lot of JOM program applications of what the BIE sends out doesn't have that number. So again, it's more focused on the structure of the BIE. However, I think the trickle down effect is that it affects grantees, it affects their ability to conduct business, but ultimately at the end of the day, it affects services going to our Native American students throughout all the country, but we're focused on Oklahoma. So we see this as an excellent opportunity to support our grantees in this process, to really advocate for their needs and take advantage of this opportunity and this time to really give some technical guidance and support to those grantees. And we're not going to do it alone. There's an intent to make sure that communication will go out to the state JOM Johnson O'Malley programs. Again, we have 8 or 9, I believe it's 8, prime contractors, and those prime contracts go through tribal nations. The remaining contracts, there's only 13 prime contractors who are school districts, but the majority of Johnson O'Malley programs in Oklahoma typically fall under a tribal prime contractor. So it's not only working with a state Johnson O'Malley effort or association and conference, but it's also going to making sure that we have a one-to-one relationship with each of the prime contractors. And I will also upload, and I wanted to share it on my screen, but I don't think it'll share. If I stop sharing really quick and can you see my screen still right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Back in February, and we mentioned this in our last OACIE report, but the intent to strengthen Johnson O'Malley programs and OSDE being a good advocate to partner and to really advocate for those needs, but wanted to quickly zoom through the numbers. What does the data tell us? And if I can refresh your memory, we've gone over these enrollment numbers before. And for the total of 158,698 students or individuals who are kindergarten through, they're ages 3 through 18. These are enrolled a part of those nations. This isn't Johnson O'Malley. These are, this is leading up to the argument that we have a substantial amount of enrolled students in our tribal nations. But the fast facts, contracts by tribal nation, again, I want to remind everyone that we have JOM contractors, the Cherokee Nation, Shine-Arapaho Tribes, Chickasaw Nation, Choctaw Nation, Citizen Potawatomi Nation, Muskogee Creek Nation, Osage Nation, Seminole Nation. And those are their number, their respective district numbers are to the right there. In individual public schools who are subcontracted total, but the existing amount of JOM programs is 324. I'll zoom in there a little, let you see it better. And then the potential number of JOM programs could be 188. Again, we established a timeline on how to support the school districts who are on this list, and really what are some potential needs, and really this is just throwing something on the wall to explore how we can support JOM programs. But it could be through achievement of data sharing amongst TEAs, the SEA, and various LEAs, of which some tribal nations are already doing this, so that's not going to be an immediate need. However, they might need a need somewhere else. Maybe improvement toward GIPRA Modernization Act compliance, other sort of preparations, and assistance with maybe certain standards, ensuring meaningful consultation, targeting recruitments, some sort of communication out. Maybe it could just be also a community of practice. So if the OSDE could create a space for grantees to meet together and discuss ways to improve. So those might be potential needs out there.
Can I ask a question about your thoughts on that?
Yes, yes.
The 5 tribes host a JOM conference annually. And this, Jim might have an answer to this question, but I wonder how many JOM program personnel from across the state attend this JOM conference hosted by the 5 tribes. And is this possibly a discussion with or a collaboration or partnership with the 5 tribes to host, to work together to address some of these concerns that you've shown?
Yes, that would have to be a part of it. We haven't made any communication out yet, but that would definitely be the intent.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mary.
Mary McCormick. A question not only to Julian, but also to us as a board and to you as chair. That's a good question, because that was what I was going to ask, except this premise. Board members, we are a state organization. We were, the state of Oklahoma are the ones who created us and were named by elected officials at one time. I don't know what it reads now, but anyway, Julian, at any of these meetings, JOM, instead of, as our chairman said, can we meet there? Madam Chair, we're the state organization. We're the ones who would be asking, come to us. We want to hear, and we have information to share with you, so we can finally get on a road maybe of actually coming up with some real positive information and policies that will really strengthen these tribes. As our chair, it's not a matter of asking Julian, can we go to your JOM state meetings? We're a state organization. Oklahoma created us because they heard the tribal leaders cry for help. we're the ones that recognize the help. We need help. Recognize us that in education. And this is where that should be an annual event. Reports ought to be flying fast and furious across our conference board table and everyone. We have new leadership within the tribes every 4 years. And so Julian and those of you, us who aspire to be state leaders, we need to help. This is where we can help, but you must include us in and not JOM thinking they're out there. We have our own little funds. This is our own little party. No, they're in charge of a lot of education. And so, however, our state board needs to really, they need to recognize us, I think, Julian and Madam Chair, as a committee with hopefully a little bit of power behind us. So if we're going to have this meeting, be sure it may be centrally located, more centrally located. But of course, the big tribes do have nicer buildings. Thank you.
And continuing on, I wanted to highlight a specific instance of a query that came into my office. One, it regards a constituent who asked the question particular to ESSA Title VI and US Code 20 US Code 7424. What are the requirements for representation of tribes on, they referred it to as IEC committees. That is for Johnson O'Malley. For Title VI, it's Indian Parent Committees. So that just note that the question is meant to cover IPCs. I have only had a couple of districts that I'm aware to request an official representative of the nation. Are schools mandated to simply make the request for tribal representation or required to have the name of an actual official representative for their application? If I have had only a couple of questions from the LEAs within our boundaries, so I'm trying to determine what passes on their Title VI applications. So essentially, this is a question that has been coming up a lot more often recently. So really focusing on trying to give a formulated response or a common response to this. And I wanted to clarify for the board that our response states ESSA section 6114 C42 as codified in 20 USC 7424 states that representatives of Indian tribes on Indian lands located within 50 miles of any school that the agency will serve if such tribe has any children in that school. LEAs are required to assure that their Title VI Indian Parent Committee will be composed of representatives of Indian tribes on Indian lands located within 50 miles of any school that the agency will serve if such tribes have any children in that school. Currently, there is no mandate to simply make the request for tribal representation, although there remains the expectation to comply with requirements set forth by the citation in ESSA. So please be aware that the U.S. Office of Indian Ed has recognized in their most recent Part 2 Easy Frequently Asked Questions, FAQs, version 14, that there is a difference between representatives of Indian tribes and appropriate officials. So the point of why I bring this up to the council is that there's still some confusion around a representative of an Indian tribe versus an appropriate official of an Indian tribe, and that there is a difference. The OIE states appropriate officials may be used within an Indian Parent Committee's tribal representative, however, it is not required. We encourage you to review OIE's FAQ 610 on page 17 of version 14 as dated March 16, 2020. It is important to note that prior to the submission of a Title VI federal application, tribal appropriate officials are individuals elected or designated in writing by the tribal nation as an educational representative per ESSA section 8538A, as codified in 20 USC 7918. This is where unelected or non-designated tribal representatives would be insufficient in their ability to affirm a tribal consultation. So that's a lot. Oh, yeah, and just to summarize, a tribal representative is an individual who does not meet the definition of an appropriate official and is located within 50 miles of any school that the agency will serve. If such tribe has any children in that school, I linked the FAQ there, and I'll upload this document as well to the Google Drive. But just to kind of, if you got lost in all that verbiage, the question is saying, when the concern from the constituent was that they were needing, it came from a tribal nation, and the LEA was asking the question, why are they asking us to sign the document? The document being a tribal consultation. And then I cite that because you're an appropriate official. Well, they want to instead, they meaning the tribe, were wanting to identify a tribal representative to sign for them. And that's within the power of the tribal nations to identify and designate somebody to sign for the nation. So the purpose of the guidance really is to try to help tackle a consistent issue that folks are still a little confused on what a tribal representative is versus an appropriate official. So an appropriate official is somebody who's elected or designated in writing for the purpose of consultation. If they are not, then they're a tribal representative. Now, if a school district uses the appropriate official for their Indian Parent Committee assurance and for their tribal consultation, that's great. They use one person for both meetings. They have to have an Indian Parent Committee meeting, and then they have to have a tribal consultation. Sometimes LEAs kind of consolidate all that into one, and that's okay. That's within their right. But I think it gets a little bit more murky when a school district doesn't consult with an appropriate official for their tribal consultation. So they would in turn have to have two meetings. They'd have to have for their Indian Parent Committee a tribal representative, but they would still need to do a second, which is a tribal consultation for their appropriate official. So really wanting to tease that out, and this kind of calls into kind of the movement of where I'm going, or the direction of, issuing a little bit more additional guidance on helping school districts understand the difference. And that, in my opinion, which I will do my best to leave my own personal bias out of the way, is that the best way to solicit input from the tribe is to get it from an appropriate official, somebody elected and or designated by their elected superiors of the nation. So that is one example of questions that we're still getting at the State Department, and we're working on making sure that those are clarified.
Can I interject something, or
yeah, go ahead.
Say something on that? That has to do with Title VI programs. Are you trying to streamline both JOM and Title VI together to address all the concerns together, or because I don't think that's required through the Johnson O'Malley. We're a school district, we're funded by school district, for example. I don't know if tribes require that with their JOM programs, but
that's a great question. So is the intent to combine both of them? That I wasn't thinking about that, but I'd like to know the council's thoughts. If we do guidance, do we make sure that it further clarifies consultation and appropriate officials and representatives as it differs between Title VI versus Johnson O'Malley?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Mary McCormick.
Go ahead, Mary.
This is very interesting. I see this document was dated, what was it, March, where did I see that? March 20, 2020. So that means I certainly was excluded, evidently. So Julian, you're working on this, you say. This is what you're designing?
This is interim guidance, yes, to school districts.
Let me remind you and all the others sitting at our table And at least maybe the Sycan Fox, maybe we're the only tribe. But Julian, education is listed in our treaty. And so that's why I'm always quick to say, it is the United States government who will provide for us education. So you others may need to check your treaties and see if that promise was also made to you. I'm sure it does. And so I would say, Julian, don't get us in a corner now to where we can't back out of. We as board members need to know the rights of our Indian tribes in the state of Oklahoma. We have always set the standard, and we were quick to respond. And so be careful how you head down this path. And definitely, Julian, State Department, you need to have your advisory board right there with you whenever. We should be the first ones to hear whatever you're recommending. Then I can take it back to our tribe, and this is what we recommend, 1, 2, 3. But I want to hear from the other tribal leaders. You know, am I completely off base or what? But whether I am or not, I'm speaking just as an individual, a board member to this board. And I've had a little bit of experience with Indian business. And so, again, all this needs to be, is it in our packet? I'm sorry, Julian. Is it in our packet? Is this information in our packet?
It'll be uploaded in the Google Drive. Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt you, Julian. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. Any other thoughts from council members on if we should, I guess in a sense, combine interim guidance for both JOM and Title VI programs? I avoided doing that in the design of this because of the confusion.
There has, this is Mary McCormick, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mary.
There has been no confusion with the Sycan Fox anyway. I better speak as a Sycan Fox and an Indian citizen again, and I was an elected official, but I never chose to sit on a JOM committee or Title VI. I left that to the membership of our tribe who had children in the schools currently, and I would pay attention to how their school was treating them. So we don't want to keep combining, Julian. I would go very slow on this. Make sure you've contacted all the tribes, because the first thing they're going to do is look for blame when this fails, and they're going to start looking for who is it started all this and who is to blame.
It's actually the school districts that are required to reach out to tribal leaders, to host tribal consultations, and there's quite a bit of confusion with how to proceed with tribal leaders and who comes to the table and who signs. And so school districts are required to follow the ESSA guidelines for tribal consultation. And I believe Julian is just trying to answer all those school district questions regarding the tribal consultation procedures and how to correctly go about having these tribal consultations between school districts and tribes. So I think that's a great idea. It's just how we collaborate the needs in addressing the needs of our kids throughout the state with tribes. And so do you have other items that you need to report on, Julian? I'm interested in a couple of things that we
Madam Chair, I want to speak before he leaves the program. Thank you.
Yes, Mary?
Well, if you're ready, let's, I would prefer to just leave it as it is and then let the tribal leadership, Madam Chair, they're elected people. They have won the right to represent Indian people, their particular tribe. You and I, we're named by the state of Oklahoma. And of course, the tribes did ask the governor to name me as through a resolution they passed. Can't talk for the rest of you all, but anyway, I think, Julian, I think that's a good start, just a good job. And you need to bring that to attention. You probably get around more than I do to the leadership or to those program chairmen. And, or maybe we could ask as many, invite chiefs and their staff, not their staff, the elected people in with us once a year and kind of pose this as a problem. It may not be a problem for them. We're just assuming. And I'm glad you're looking at this, at these laws real good, Julian. We need to look at them. And if they need updating, fine. But if they don't, it's just a matter of the people not knowing how to act or play their role. You know, they have a role but I'm sure I thought I saw on some of those agendas that come across my desk that there was training for those who were named to the boards. Is that so? Somebody help me. Or they just jump in there and start acting the day they're named to a board, to the JOM board or Title VI board.
This is Julian, the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, and one of their findings was that typically what happens is that there are elected board members, a part of a parent Indian Education Committee, and what happens is that they just kind of jump in cold, and there's not an adequate amount of training and assistance to each of these committees. So that has caused a lot of strife and issues and needs. And the proposal, essentially, and the comments that I'm making are we should be a good steward and good partner and execute outreach to make sure that both parties, all parties, know what is written in the law, and that the best practice is to always reach out to tribal elected leadership and or their designees.
Yes, this is Mary McCormick, and I certainly agree with you, Julia. And the Second Fox now have an annual meeting every August, the last Saturday in August. And that may be a good time for you to, I'll ask if to put you on the agenda where you can make such a remark to those members sitting out in the building, for them to think about and pay attention to their duties a little more. Certainly we want to cooperate with the school superintendent, and I think it can be improved. There's always room for improvement in all that we do every day.
Sure.
So thank you for bringing that to our attention. And I'm a lifelong Oklahoman, so I know a little bit about not only just Indian tribes, but Oklahoma. I guess I better stop. I may be making some people sick. Thank you.
Ease some of your concerns, we do send regular communication to Chief Justin Wood for the Second Fox Nation, as well as Edwina Butler-Wolf, who is the Education Director for the nation as well. Madam Chair, that completes the rest of my report. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I was wanting to, I was hoping to hear about how the tribal nations are assisting or hoping to collaborate and partner with the State Department on addressing the needs of American Indian children in the state, especially in the rural areas, and the leadership they're trying to take in addressing the needs of virtual learning across the state. Have you had a good reply from tribal leaders, tribal nations to help the State Department meet these needs of our kids?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give a few examples. tribal nations who have larger capacity are making available online resources, curriculum, and various other sorts of supports and information and resources to their school districts. For example, Chickasaw Nation is publicizing their elementary curriculum, and they put out several social media blasts about what's available and what they offer. Cherokee Nation has inquired with the OSCE to help pick up and support school districts who are needing to be covered under meal programs. So Cherokee Nation reached out to want to provide additional meals to schools who were not covered under forgive me, I'm not a food nutrition, child nutrition expert, but I assume that there are some school districts who don't get covered under child nutrition funds or programs. So Cherokee Nation was wanting to step in to help feed. And I think that was an excellent demonstration of tribal investment. Again, another example would be with Iowa Nation. And her name escapes me right now, but OACIE Nation reached out, and they were offering Chromebooks to any kids who were from Iowa peoples. And they are a smaller nation, smaller capacity, but they were wanting to offer Chromebooks and or curriculum and or other sorts of supplies needed for students. However, sometimes those come with certain caveats, those being that they want to focus on, and within their right to focus only on enrolled citizens of their nation. So, I think there's many examples of how tribal nations are stepping up and have been stepping up for a long time to take care of their local communities. The examples are various. I certainly wish that there was like a central database where all these supports are existing, and there is not one yet. But that's those are a few examples that I wanted to at least use to answer your question.
Okay, thank you. And the other area that was a concern, and I believe I emailed you about how the COVID-19 pandemic is affecting not only public schools, but our American Indian students in Oklahoma with college. And I don't know if you want to say anything to that, Robert, but how this, was there a meeting recently addressing the needs of tribal colleges and BIE schools? And were you able to join that conversation?
Yes, there was a meeting last Friday, and then they were overwhelmed with all the participants. So they had one yesterday, and they're having another one on, I think tomorrow, on the listening session. And what they're discussing is the funding of the BIE schools, and there's a group from the Department of Ed had made a comment, and the BIE is not trying to split the funding, but because the BIE funds the BIE schools, but also funds two of the tribal colleges fully, and then the other tribal colleges on individual student count. But there's some in the Department of Ed was thinking that because the tribal colleges had received 20 million earlier, they left out that the BIE schools received tribal colleges received 20 million, but the BIE schools received 46 million. And so, they had it down that the BIE schools serve 46,000 students in their schools, and the tribal colleges serve 32,000 students. So it's just a funding deal that we're going on, and we're trying to, the tribal college is trying to say, we serve 32,000. We're asking for like 35% of the funding, but if they were going to do it equally, it would actually be up in the 40s. But we're serving the same students. I mean, we all know that some of the students that we serve are the parents of the kids that are at home. You know, we're also serving those students that are dual credit, and also some of the colleges have Head Start programs within their colleges. So that discussion is continuing, and so we're just trying to make sure that it's that everybody is funded equally to that extent. So, but when you talk about Julian, when you talk about the internet accessibility to our students, you know, a lot of people make that assumption that our native students had that access, you know, I mean, especially when you compare students who attend, and I'm just saying, you know, like the Jinx, the Unions, the Broken Arrows, that everybody has that access, and they don't. Our students here at the college, you know, that go down to Walika, Wetumpka, you know, Kemah, and you know, Wilson, the small schools, they don't have that access. And so we had to ask the the Higher Learning Commission for a waiver to do online instruction because we're an attendance taking institution. So we got an extension through September. And so what we're doing for summer is those students, and we got the CARES funding. And in fact, today we were passing that, giving our students the checks that goes directly to the students. And if you'd seen our parking lot this morning, backed up, we were giving full-time students $800 and part-time $400. But for our, you know, we were having the same thing as Superintendent Hoffmeister said earlier. You know, some of the districts are, you know, some of our students were doing handwritten assignments that bring them in, turn them in, or they try to mail them in, or do it on, you know, various ways. Some have access to technology, some don't. But what we're doing for the next semester, because with some of the funding we received, every student who enrolls in 9 hours or more for the summer session, they're getting a laptop with internet accessibility. And so the laptop is costing us by itself $1,007. But we're going to have the internet accessibility on the laptop only, okay? Because we thought about buying the hotspots, you know, whether it's phone or whatever device, but when you do that, then that means anybody in that whole family can use that data, right? And then, so the student cannot complete their assignments. So when we put it on the laptop, which is we started out with AT&T as $55 a month per student. Now they've lowered it down to $39. It comes out to about, and we're going to buy it for 3 months. So it comes out to about $1,150 per student. So they'll get to take that laptop and they get to keep that. And we delayed our start of our summer session to June 1st. We're doing a 10-week session instead of our traditional 14 and 15. And we're starting a month later. But the other problem is our staff's got to learn how to have some professional development on online instruction. And so it's not that simple as people think it can be. And then you can see why K-12, some of the parents struggle at home and students struggle at home as well. So it's a continuing deal that we've got to work together on. But when we bring up this problem to Department of Ed, when we met with Betsy DeVos, they think that all Native students have internet accessibility, and they seem to be surprised when we say we don't. And so that's a problem that we have. And so, but we're addressing that now. And it's just an ongoing process. So hopefully, my goal is to have classes on campus starting June 1, but if not, we'll continue online. And starting Monday, we'll have an enrollment. I ordered 175 laptops at a cost of $207,000. You know, only got 119 from the CARES Act, but I'll make that other part up. But we got to have school, and we got to serve our students. And so Like I said, it's something that we have to do, but again, our students are parents of the K-12, students as well. So I think everybody's in that same deal. But again, a lot of people make that assumption that all of our native students come from a home that has all this accessibility, and then they, in fact they don't. So that's how we're handling it anyway. Thanks for asking.
Yes, thank you for the update. I did have a couple of students who mentioned, and just in talking, they mentioned how they park in a McDonald's parking lot to do their work.
Yeah.
Or they're trying to work around going to different locations, homes of friends who just to turn in their assignments for college.
Yeah, we even had students come up and park in our parking lot because we have Wi-Fi in our, in our area. The buildings were closed, obviously, and we couldn't. We had closed our campus, so they would come up, and then we started setting containers out in our entryway so students could come up anytime and drop assignments off. Other staff would scan them and get them to the faculty so they could grade, but you'd be surprised how many students that don't have that access and still depend on the paper handwritten, assignments. And again, like you said, going to the McDonald's, but those were things that we were trying to deal with, because we started out with 171 students. 141 were full-time, and because of once we started this online, we had 38 students went from full-time to part-time, and majority of that was because of access to technology, and and they couldn't get the assignments, the communication. So we tried various methods of trying to get that to them, and then but so anyway, so we're looking at those. We've extended our incomplete grade or deadlines for another month to allow them to come up, during this, I guess, dead month of May, to get some assistance to get those assignments completed so they can get a grade, because a lot of that, then we still got to look at their, the financial aid and, things like that. But a lot of that was on the CARES Act, was those students who are Title IV eligible, and people were getting them mixed up to Pell eligible, and not all students file for Pell, okay, but they are Title IV eligible. So again, sorry.
Okay, thank you for that update.
Yes.
Julian, have we heard any concerns with our BIE schools in Oklahoma? I know we have 4 or 5 BIE schools, but I'm pretty sure that they, I only heard that they sent their students home from Riverside, but I don't know about any other needs coming from BIE schools. Jim, are you able to touch on that?
Yes. I know they did send the students home from Riverside, but from our Jones Academy, we did have to also send our kids home, and they're home right now. And we're just like a regular school district. We work on the issues of continuing some kind of education with them. And I know Jones Academy's been had several conversations with the BIE, and they've even got some stimulus money, some CARES Act money coming in for that. And it's the same, you can almost just picture it, it's almost the same problems as a public. How we're going to do that, how we're going to provide things for the session in the fall. Just a whole lot to this. But if you're a residential school, you got other problems about the protocol, if the students come back, how to keep everything clean. There's just a lot of issues to it. So yeah, we did send our kids home, and so we're just dealing with those kind of issues that we're talking about. So that's about all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or concerns? We're ready to move on to the next item of agenda on the agenda. So next is a discussion on current issues, goals, and updates related to American Indian students. And first is the Oklahoma Advisory Council on Indian Education Annual Report for 2019. Do I pull that up, Julian, and share it?
If you can share it with me again real quick, I'll pull that up. Are you able to do that?
Who, me?
Yeah, if you could share it with me on the Google, because I don't have it readily pulled up. Let me see.
Yeah. I thought you were ready because I just saw it a while ago.
Oh.
Sorry.
Who, me? Ready?
I gotta quickly share this. Sorry. All right, sent it to you.
Okay. Pull up. Okay, it just came in. Let me open this up.
I'm sorry, I should have asked that and confirmed that because I thought I saw that when we first logged in to the meeting and thought you were ready to go with it.
Oh, it was probably a different
Yeah.
presentation.
Okay.
All right, let me share screen. Okay, can you see my screen, everyone?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. And just to remind everyone, this is the intended draft. Is that right, Lucianne?
Yes.
Okay, so this is all draft. So feel free if you see something, let us know. And the only thing I would also mention is that we'll have to transition this to the new agency template. This was a former template, but now since there is state branding, we'll get that pulled over. So if you could just look at the text, and we'll worry about the aesthetics later on. Okay.
Okay. I already see one error. We still have 2018 in that first page, that's all.
Right.
So the first three slides is just something that we present up normally every year. And so those are the priorities taken out of the bylaws into reminding the State Board of Education. And this is an update on Title VI Indian Ed programs across the state. The number of students represented in these Title VI programs and the amount of funding coming into school districts. And 406 schools receive Title VI funds from the Office of Indian Education.
Madam Chair, Mary McCormick.
Yes, Barry?
Have we been given this copy?
Yes, it was emailed a couple of times for council updates and suggestions.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. This is a slide on BIE, an update on serving 92,589 kids through JOM funding coming from the Bureau of Indian Education. And those are all the BIE schools in Oklahoma. Again, this is verbiage taken from the bylaws of the councils, the council bylaws. And a map showing the State Board of Education and others, the tribal jurisdictions along with schools, public schools. Next slide. And at any time you all have any questions, just jump in.
Jim, could you remind me again, is that supposed to be a straight line or is it more jagged between Choctaw and Chickasaw jurisdictions?
Yeah, that's always a debate, so it doesn't matter. So just leave it. I always say it's a straight line there, but anyway, there's no use getting into that debate. It takes too much time. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I think I still need to put those numbers there, those figures. Off the top of my head, it's about 206 districts who are, well, actually, it's 324 combined who are $40,000 or over, or they are 50% or above. Now, the breakdown, I'll have to import that, but I've presented on those numbers before. I'll just pull them over from the different presentation and put them in here with the map.
And this is tribal consultation information. Keep going. And just a reminder about which schools are required for tribal consultation and in what part of, covering all the different title programs. I believe
Madam Chair, did we have that top consultation meeting March 13? Was that held? I'm sorry, I thought it was 20. I was thinking 20 while we're in all this disease stuff, but it's 2019.
Right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There's no picture on my screen. Was there supposed to be a picture there, Lucian?
No.
Okay. We'll put a picture, and if I can remember correctly, it's going to be from the Oklahoma City area Title VI Metro Consortium consultation.
Possibly.
Okay.
Slide on the highlights of the collaboration or just tribal consultation between tribes and schools. Partnerships from the State Department. Go ahead, Julian. Different opportunities that teachers and principals, administrators, board members are able to attend. It's open. All these different Indian Ed conferences that are hosted throughout the state.
And just an aside for the council here, you'll notice here at the bottom, the last bullet point under July 2019, this year we will have an Engage OK 2020. However, it'll be conducted virtually. And last year, Gary, do you know how many sessions we had last year? It was like 130?
Yeah, I hate to give you an exact number, but that's very close. There was a whole lot last year.
Okay. This year it will be conducted virtually, not in person, and there's still details on how that will be worked out. So just to let you guys know, to expect the opportunity to still continue, but be conducted virtually.
Okay.
Oh, the State Indian Ed Conference. I'll add a picture there.
The work on social study standards that we began in 2019, the continual work on this, and how representation from American Indian educators and tribes were all part of this effort in renewing the social study standards.
I think there was this slide right here we intend to, and still working with Brenda Chapman, Director for Social Studies at the agency, and we're going to list out the tribal nations who were involved and get a list here and put that information on this slide. And then I don't
an option. I didn't know if we want to do this, but we covered this information in council meetings, and I wanted to give them an opportunity to share what's important to share.
Corey, do you know if there's like any sort of brief info that we could kind of put on here on this slide? Not Carrie. Did I say Carrie? I meant Corey.
No, you said Corey, but I was struggling trying to come off of mute. Okay, so there are items that we can put, like the information that I shared with the number of districts served, as well as the number of students served, and then the number of credentials earned, which I have not pulled, but I can pull for our Native American students.
Great. Yeah, that's good info.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a slide by the State Department on assessment.
Now, on the assessment piece, I'd really like to get the input from the council. When we talk assessment, there are many things that we could talk assessment. We could talk NAEP, we could talk OPI, OSTP. I mean, is there a preference for what the council would like to see on the assessment slide?
Because and let me try to give my 2 cents there is because NAEP only pulls a certain percentage of American Indian students in their reports, I would really like to see the assessment pulled from the State Department and how our kids are performing on state assessment statewide. But we only usually highlight a couple of grades. 1 grade at the elementary, 1 grade at the middle school, and how our high school students are performing.
Julian, I would also highlight the assessment information that showcases the ACT scores, because we're higher than the national average, as it relates to not only other Native students, but in relation to just all populations, because overall, collectively, they're outperforming just based on numbers.
I had myself on mute. I was agreeing with you, Corey. The thing I would say about that is that I'll import some of those assessment slides from the last in-person meeting that we had. If you can recall, there are a few slides I shared from superintendent's remarks at Intertribal Council of the 5 tribes. So I'll make sure to pull some of those bar graphs into this section, but then also add in some OSTP grade level data as well, and try to get that in graphic form.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. If you could note that for me, Lucienne, that'd be great. Or Kita, if you could notate that so I don't forget.
Okay.
Julian, are you familiar with how we're doing on the SAT? I'm not as familiar with that as I am with the ACT.
That's a great question. Okay, so I was only able to attain a paper copy, so we'll have to scan it in. I want to distribute an SAT report that I just recently got my hands on. It's no longer embargoed, and looking at that information, they break down those SAT scores. I can't remember off the top of my head where we were sitting for American Indian subgroup, but there was a specific page on the disciplines, on how the American Indian subgroup is doing in each discipline area, and it had excellent information. I think bringing that and first showing it to you guys, I would like to bring that in and put that before you guys to look at. But it's a great booklet. It's about 30-40 pages worth of information and data. So you can get really lost real quick, but I'll make sure to get that scanned. And it's in paper format, so I'll make sure I get that uploaded for you guys.
Great, thank you.
Okay. This is an update on the OIER resource website and the continual work on this process. Just touching on any adjustments or additions, changes we have made, and just briefly encouraging the use of this, I guess, this resource. And an update on the other types of funding coming in through the state and targeting college and career readiness in the Native Youth projects.
I believe I only corrected the numbers. I still have yet to correct the FY 2019. I'll make sure, but I'll double check those numbers as well.
Okay. This is that. The objectives taken from the NYCP grants. Native language revitalization, that was an update that needs to be incorporated. Any other updates from the State Department on this?
Yes, so working with a director of world languages other than English, Kathleen Skinner, Dr. Skinner, she has given me a sheet of information breaking down by course code offering and, if I can remember correctly, enrollment. So what I'll do is I'll copy and paste in the best way possible a table version of that information onto this slide. I might have to mess with it a little bit just because if we put it in a table, we'll have to make sure the 508 compliance, ADA 508 is there, because when you put tables in, you have to make sure the accessibility is also maintained. So we'll work on that. But we have updated numbers for this. And it breaks down this number, this 14. I think it went up by 100, but like I said, I'll import that information.
Okay. Different native languages taught in our schools and their course codes.
Now, looking
the same, I think.
I did want to mention, looking at some of the data, although they are course coded, come to find out that doesn't mean that they're actually being taught. Now, I think it might be informational to know what's actually being taught and what's not. But at least, it's one thing to be coded, which is a feature in and of itself, but then also to be taught is another kind of step we'll have to do. And I think it'd probably be advantageous to, as you're giving the verbal narrative, Lucianne, you kind of mention that a little bit.
Okay.
Okay.
And we ended off with the normal slides. That's part of this. All right, do you have any questions or comments or additions that we need to consider?
Yeah, Lucianne, on that assessment part, or I know we talked about ACT and SAT, did we have graduation rates in there already?
I know that that's part of the State Department's report that we're hoping to just include. Is that correct, Julian?
Yeah. So in years previous, I've seen graduation rates in there. We'll make sure to include that in this year's.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to include that because I think by not, we're just missing out on a lot of students because, our top performing students, ACT and SAT, they're being acknowledged and recognized and identified, but we're missing out on all those, and being an open enrollment institution like us, some of those students don't get any acknowledgement, and graduation is just graduating is the key. and then coming on into college after that, higher ed, when you talk about, college ready, but so if we can just include those stats too, because we serve those students. And whenever I look on the news and people talk about, tuition free, but you got to have an ACT of 24. Well, we don't get those students, and we don't close the door on those students yet. They still come here, graduate, and go to the mainstream institutions and do well. And so I think those students need to be highlighted somewhere. And if it starts with the graduation rate, then that's where we need to start.
Okay. Yeah, we'll make that happen. Keaton, could you notate that? Don't miss out on that.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'd like to speak.
Yes.
Mr. Bible, I really appreciate your remarks on those students who need some type of recognition, march across the stage. I, for one, played basketball 4 years high school. I made the team when I was a freshman. And I was very scared when I walked into that gymnasium as a freshman. There were about 60 young girls there, and I thought, oh, wow. And but I made the team. And at my graduation, nobody was recognized. The boys, we had a boys team, and like me, they didn't even give me a little old certificate and thank me for my help. And I put our little school on the map. We were in the paper, Sunday paper. We played 2 basketball games a week, didn't we, on Tuesday and Friday nights, I believe. But those little things like that, let's recognize them. Yes, not everybody can be a valedictorian, but those in charge of schools can make little things like that happen. And that student will remember that the rest of their lives, that they were recognized for something. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. We have many students that are not receiving some kind of credit, goodbye. And that's not only Indians, it's non-Indians and Black and whatever. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Robert. Any other thoughts or questions regarding the 2019 annual report?
Lucianne, this is Shoshana, and I apologize to the committee. I have another Zoom conference call starting, and so I'm going to have to leave. I just needed to know, is there anything you need me for with regard to a quorum?
Julian, do you have a reply to that?
No, I think we're good. I don't have the agenda right in front of me. Did council?
I think all that's remaining is the legislative updates.
Okay,
great. Thank you. Be well, everyone, and I apologize.
Thank you.
Good to hear from you, or see you.
Do we have to have a quorum to adjourn?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap this up. That's into that.
Are we good with the quorum then?
Do you want to adjourn and then go back and have a discussion? That would be probably the best I could do.
Yeah, let's do that. Is the council okay with that?
It's okay with me.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn, Shoshana.
Okay.
Annette, I second it.
Seconded by Annette. Roll call.
Okay. Lucianne Harjo,
Yes.
Jim Parrish,
Yes.
Mary McCormick,
Yes.
Paul Pinkerton,
Yes.
Robert Bible,
Yes.
Shoshana Wasserman,
Yes.
Corey Gray,
Yes.
Annette Long,
Yes.
Julian Guerrero.
Yes.
Okay. All right, motion passed. So back to the discussion on the annual report. Are we good to go on that? We just have to add what State Department numbers are.
Right, you're right. Yeah. Good.
All right. Legislative updates. Jim, you want to help me with this on? I know there are
Yeah,
several.
I can.
Okay.
I know, Mr. Crabtree's had surgery, so I don't know how much he's up and around and things, but, I just got off a COSA meeting today. Monty might address this too. He was part of that probably, but, and the thing that I got out of this, the whole thing, what's going on right now is trying to look at the budget. They're not back in session yet, not meeting yet. And the word that I got today is that they won't schedule returning to the Capitol until a budget deal's been worked out. So they're trying to work in a budget deal, and they're really looking really hard at different issues about what the budget is going to be. Just for school business, they did approve the budget's been approved. It's flat, so it's approved for FY20. So now they're looking at, legislators looking at what does 21 look like, all those different things about the budget and stuff. So there's not much to report. We're just waiting on them to come back and get back into session, look at the budget things that are going on, how it affects our school districts. And so there's just not a whole lot to report on that right now at this time.
Okay.
And that's about all I have for that. And
Jim, on the sunset bill, that's in part of the legislative items to be addressed, correct?
yeah,
Or the advisory?
correct. So I will check. Yeah, I'll check on that, Lucy Ann. And I don't know, since it's COVID, what that looks like. I'll just get a hold of my people up there and see what that looks like. I'm glad you brought that up. I hadn't even thought about that. We don't even know where that's at right now with all this COVID stuff and what kind of bills are they looking at. A lot of them are looking at policy, and let me just look on that, and then I'll send you and Julian an email and tell you where we're at.
Okay.
Because that's a big issue for us. So let me just see where we're at on that. Okay, I'll do that today.
Thank you, because that might affect our July meeting. Is that correct, Julian?
Yeah, yes, it can affect our July meeting. So I'll get on that and try to find something. I'm glad you reminded me. I hadn't even thought about that.
So for the council, we're discussing the sunset bill for the Council on Indian Education. Okay. Do you hear the? I don't know if there's anything I need to do with that. Is that mine? Anyway, the extension of the OACIE is in the legislature right now, and we're hoping to hear an update, or but most importantly, ensure that the council continues after or is extended. And so we'll send everyone an update. Okay. Well, any comments? Otherwise, have we addressed everything, and any other discussions? Are we good?
Madam Chair, Mary McCormick, then I'll just trust, that we will be given adequate notice and keep up with what we can do by July 29. We may be back to regular business, or the state may be. So we'll just kind of wait word from the State Department, from Julian, and keep us advised.
Yes. Okay. Anyone have any closing remarks? Any announcements before we adjourn, before we end our meeting?
The next quarterly meeting is Wednesday, July 29th, 2020.
Okay. Well, it's good to see and hear everybody. Hope you all are taking care of yourself and your families. And we'll
Lucianne, one thing before we go, there's a lot of people not attending these meetings, and this makes it pretty easy. Have we, do we need to do something on this about their attendance?
Julian, you want to reply to that?
Yeah, so we have received, thanks to Mr. Parrish, documentation from Mr. Walking Stick that he has resigned from his position. So it's an open position technically now. I think talking with Superintendent and Monty a little bit, it's a good idea that we begin to talk with each of the appointment authorities to let them know that there's an opening, and let the appointment authority kind of have a heads up on who are some recommended people to sit in as part of OACIE. Those are the immediate thoughts that I have on it. And as far as attendance for other council members, I think what would also be a good idea is maybe bringing an updated attendance sheet of everyone on the council, and taking a look at those figures and reevaluating members who are a little bit more chronic on their absenteeism.
Madam Chair.
To another phase, Julian, on where we've already researched all of this and getting ready to visit with the state on the steps we need to take to get another representative on the council for the different seats. Is that correct? I mean, that's where I thought we were at, getting guidance on how we move forward. And is there something that, you know, I need to do or the council needs to do to move and push it forward quickly?
Madam Chair. Mary McCormick.
Yes, Mary. Hold on just a minute. I was asking Julian a question on that. The process for this is that I thought we were to that point already. I thought we already addressed all of this, and we would need action to, and what action does the State Department give us to move forward to address the attendance issues that we are having?
Oh, okay. Yes. So it would be notifying, like a letter of thanking that individual for their service, that notifying them that they're no longer on the OACIE. And then at that point, you would need to move to the appointing authority to make an invitation or let the appointing authority know that there's an opening and that it needs to be filled as soon as possible.
Okay. So this letter, is that something that is sent out from the State Department or from us, from me?
From the board, I would think. Madam Chairman, I still want to speak whenever.
Okay.
It would come from the council.
Okay. Mary?
Thank you. First of all, James, I want a part of that sandwich that you're eating on. But Madam Chair, I think those directions were given in the law that we were organized under of how to handle this. And I'll have to find mine and check it out, but keep everything before this board. If a resignation has been made, Madam Chair, that should have been one of the first bits of business before this board. And maybe all the board does know. Maybe it's just me, I'm the one that don't know. But by protocol, Madam Chair, you keep us advised and that there is an opening And then there is a way for us to go about this. So I would suggest you and Julian, look it over together, and I'll clue me in if you want to. I wouldn't mind sitting in. But this is the board. We're to be kept apprised of every move you make, Madam Chair. And we're the ones who help make the decisions, not who did you say you'd go to? But anyway, that's my input, and that's the way I feel about our board, advisory board for the state of Oklahoma.
I was seeking advisement from legal, from the State Department on how to proceed.
Well, all right.
Okay. Thank you for that, reminding me about that, Paul, and bringing up that concern. Okay. Well, it's good to see you all. If there's no further questions, discussions.
Okay.
All right. Have a blessed day.
Okay, we'll see you then.
Everybody stay safe.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good day.
All right, bye.
Everybody next time.
Uh-huh.